Hi everyone, Adrian Groenewald, Global Leadership Platform as usual, and this is the Global Leadership Conversation 1, or it's the Global Leadership Conversation series, and this is the first one that we're doing around the world, and it's to try and understand the global leadership crisis more. And I asked two standard questions. I've added a third one, which is the first now, so that we can understand the global leadership crisis. We ask our experts or influencers, leadership influencers all over the world, to define the global leadership crisis a little bit more. With me today is Dr. Rob Elkington, all the way from Canada. He is the co-founder and CEO of Global Leadership Initiative, and it's wonderful to have him with me. Thank you for your time, Rob. We appreciate it. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Adrian. It's great to be with you today, and really excited about the work that you're doing and this discussion today. I think it's going to be very meaningful. So thank you for the kind invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to have you with us. I'm going to ask you the three standard questions. Robin will have a bit of a conversation, as I do with all the others. And the first one I'm very interested in more so these days is, how would you describe or define the global leadership crisis that we so easily speak about?
Well, that's a massive question, as I'm sure you know, and it would take us weeks to unpack and volumes of writing to answer. At Global Leadership Initiatives, we exist to develop excellence in leadership globally, and that vision statement drives everything we do. We believe that good leadership will lead to a better world, obviously. So much rises and falls on leadership. And when one thinks about leadership, there has been a call to professionalize leadership, in the sense that we need to think about the three variables that impact leadership effectiveness: leader, context, and follower. And each of those, in terms of its own dynamic, is demanding a great deal of research. For instance, Brerard highlights the fact that we spend billions of dollars on leadership development, but we really aren't attaining good ROI on our leadership development inputs. And then we have to draw the distinction, Adrian, I think, between leader as human capital and leadership as social capital. And then with that distinction as well, one has to look at this notion of leader formation versus leadership development. And leader formation is all about the inner work of the leader. So there, when you think about leader, context, and follower, one has to think about competence, character, and credibility. Leaders, if they're going to look at leader formation, how do we develop leader competence? How do we equip leaders to function in an Industry 4.0 world? And the World Economic Forum highlights the distinction of skill sets needed from 2015 to 2020. And what is striking is that the one skill that hasn't changed in that 5-year period is creative problem solving. But then the second top skill that is needed is critical thinking. And then the fourth one is emotional intelligence. So it's really interesting to see that as we move into Industry 4.0 and the coalescence of the biological, the physical, and the digital, that we need more humane leadership, and we need leaders who've really taken the time to develop themselves through competence, character, and credibility. And I can unpack each of those, but obviously each of those as well is a vast reality. So the first, I would say, to address the global leadership crisis is we need better mechanisms of leader formation. And then the second is that we need to pay attention to leadership development. And colleagues and I did a global study of Delphi survey of leadership experts around the world. We published our findings in the Journal of Organizational Leadership and Development. And in that, we found that there are 4 key factors that one needs to look at for leadership development. And it's not about developing an individual as a heroic leader, but it's about designing an organization that then has the capacity to leverage distributed and dispersed leadership in multifarious ways across that organization. And big data can become a useful tool in that process, as can other mechanisms. And of course, I can share with you some of the results of that study. So I would say the global leadership crisis is about two things. Number one, leader formation, character, competence, credibility, and secondarily, leadership development, moving away from the heroic leader to a much more dispersed notion of leadership across an organization and across countries, not-for-profits, so on and so forth.
Rob, yeah, I can see we're going to have more conversations.
For sure.
Fascinating. I mean, because the very standard question is, if you say leader formation, how do we develop that then in leaders, or how do we progress that? Because you've got leadership development as a key component, let's say second. And we're saying, what's the top competency or the top attribute that we need? You've got leadership formation, and I'm finding it interesting to have to say, how do you then develop that in leaders? But that's not your angle. So you've brought up a very interesting conversation in and of itself. So leadership formation, you're saying, just give me those three elements again.
Competence, character, credibility. So competence is people's perception of my capacity to make good decisions, that I establish myself amongst the group that I'm leading, or that I'm a part of that leadership team because of my decision-making capacity, especially under pressure. When you think of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, the VUCA world, offset by vision, understanding, clarity, and agility, one of the things I need to do is to be able to make really good decisions, leveraging understanding in a world of great uncertainty. And I use Boris Johnson as a great example of this and his maneuvering around Brexit. And he entered his prime ministerial office looking like he was a highly competent individual to lead Britain out of Brexit. But then he made some decisions that really undermined his credibility, because those decisions were not driven through a sense of understanding of where the people were at, where the country is at. And so, again, leader formation, how did Boris Johnson, how was he formed as a leader? What is his leadership narrative that causes him to think he can make those decisions in that way? So that's the credibility piece.
Credibility piece. So what I just want to understand before we start wrapping up this first session of first conversation is, so competence, character, credibility. When you then develop leaders, then those are three areas that needs to be involved in that development process. So what's your competency framework? So what competencies do I need to upskill you with? Character, how do I help you strengthen, develop, mature your character? And credibility. So all that would then be blended into the leadership development, would it?
No, I would say that's leader formation. So
Okay.
There we're working with the individual to develop those three areas in the life of a person who is an emerging or emergent or existing leader, even, that we develop those three areas in their lives. Leadership development is, how do I design an organization so that, as Vardaman said in 2006, leadership can emerge in surprising ways at surprising times to accomplish surprising things. And another author, Tungus, highlights the fact that when we function with big data in organizations, anyone at any moment can become a leader if they leverage that big data to help the organization make good decisions aligned with the vision. So leadership development then is, how am I designing my organization in a way that we have this ongoing process where leaders can emerge. So I'm developing competence, character, credibility, but in that process, my organization is designed in such a way that at any moment, this person could emerge as a leader, because as we address these rapid emerging realities in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, this person at this moment has the skill set, the mindset to address or help us address this issue. And so in a process of influence, they lead us through that moment within the structure of the organization and the assigned and emergent leadership.
Words that are coming up a lot are agility, of course, fluidity.
Yes.
I've heard fluid come in very strongly. A gentleman I did an interview with in France, Chris.
Yes.
Does this play to what you're saying as well? Because your angle isn't, I'm not saying it's usually rocket science and different from everyone in the world, but it has a slight different nuance that I haven't heard exactly in that way. Do you find that as you engage the marketplace, that your philosophy, your approach is a little bit more fresh than everyone else out there? Is that what you're finding? Because I'm finding it fresher than usual.
Yeah.
Refreshing.
So yes. So I mean, I spoke at a Imagine Your Workplace conference, which is a HR conference for HR professionals here, and I talked about VUCA and VUCA Prime and the need to offset volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity with vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. And then I talked about this idea of how we design an organization to accomplish that. The organization is a complex adaptive system, a living organism that is designed to accomplish a purpose. And so it only naturally follows that within that living organism, at certain times, you can either have pathological realities or you can have realities that bring about growth. And the realities that bring about growth then is this idea of a clear vision, understanding leveraged through reading weak signals, clarity of communication and clarity of policy and structure, and then agility, which counterintuitively comes down to this idea of leadership development, where we can use what's called the Vroom-Jago decision-making model to, am I going to develop the people in this organization to themselves become leaders in this moment of crisis as we face volatility, uncertainty? Do I take the decision and work with this diverse group of people to capacitate them at a higher level as we work through these issues? And that way I'm doing leadership development in the organization, trusting that they are also building the competence, character, and credibility to meet me at that level. And the Vroom-Jago model then is a matrix that helps us to determine, when do I make the decision and when do I work with the rest of the team, either because I don't have the competency and skill set to answer this question, or because I want to develop them as emerging leaders, right? And what emerged, so to answer your question in a roundabout way, is what emerged in that conference is that the participants rated that talk as really the number one impacting piece of that conference, because it really helps us to conceptualize where we're at in terms of organizations and in terms of leadership as we move into Industry 4.0 and a VUCA world.
Okay.
So I think Chris, it's not new and it's not fresh. Doviziotis in 2005 wrote about these things. Lagardère called us to build a new cosmology of problems when he wrote about Hurricane Katrina. There's a lot of work that's been done around this. I'm just kind of synthesizing and conceptualizing, I think, what is out there already and has been researched, but needs more research.
Needs more research. Well, you're welcome to do that. Some people are so good. Dr. Rob Elkington, thank you so much. Global Leadership Initiative, co-founder and CEO. Getting your voice out there, I think it's a very valuable voice. I feel like I want to have a longer conversation, but we're going to keep it short. We'll get it out there for a first conversation. Before we let you go, tell us something interesting about where you live, geographically.
Toronto, so lots of interesting things. We are the most cosmopolitan city in the world, and diversity, of course, we know is a great platform for learning. And we love, our family loves living, in this area. And we have many friends from many different countries around the world. Of course, I was born in Zimbabwe, grew up in South Africa, and now live in just east of Toronto. So we're the most cosmopolitan city in the world. That would be one interesting thing. Another interesting thing about our city would be that it can get really cold, and we have to adjust.
When you go.
Not used to that, minus 20, minus 30. But there's lots of interesting and novel realities here.
Rob, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the magnificent work you're doing, and look forward to connecting more. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Adrian. It's been great to chat. Appreciate it.
Cheers.